The break room aboard GCS Harbinger was a quiet, sterile place, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Rows of nutrient dispensers lined the walls, each labelled with universal symbols denoting their intended species. A few tables were scattered throughout the room, their surfaces impeccably clean. The scent of sterilized air filled the chamber, with only the faintest hints of food residue lingering. A young Cadet Vrik stood in front of the largest dispenser, his 4 fingers tapping idly against the smooth metal surface. His large, compound eyes reflected the glowing red label in front of him. For human consumption only, warning, highly toxic. The words pulsed with an unsettling glow, as if to reinforce their importance. Vrik's brow ridges furrowed as he clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Dietary restrictions were common aboard an interspecies vessel. Many species had specific needs, but this was different. This wasn't some exotic chemical or biologically engineered ration. It was just a drink. And yet the warning label stood out as if it contained something truly hazardous. This was not some highly volatile chemical or corrosive compound. It was a simple beverage dispenser, and it was marked with an alarming degree of caution. Vrik's antennae twitched as he turned to his superior, Officer Grash, a veteran of the Galactic Coalition's diplomatic fleet. Grash was of the Eldari species, his thick, plated skin giving him the appearance of a walking fortress. His deep-set dark eyes had the wariness of someone who had spent far too much time in the presence of humans. "Sir," Vrik said, motioning toward the dispenser, "why does this particular beverage unit bear such an extreme warning?" Grash didn't even look up from his datapad. "Because that's coffee, Cadet." Vrik waited for further clarification, but none came. "I am unfamiliar with this coffee. What properties does it possess?" Grash sighed heavily, setting down his datapad. He regarded Vrik with the tired patience of someone explaining gravity to a hatchling. Coffee is a stimulant beverage consumed by humans. For most of us, it's an outright toxin. A single dose could cause severe physiological distress, neural overstimulation, or even death. Vrik blinked. His species, the Zelthari, had an exceptionally robust metabolism, capable of processing a wide range of substances. The idea that a mere beverage could be so deadly was unsettling. If it is so toxic, why do we allow it on the station? Grash leaned forward, lowering his voice as if sharing some great secret. Because it's their fuel. Some can't function without it. They've built entire industries around it, shaped economies with it. Hell, they've even waged wars over it. Vrik's mandibles clicked in disbelief. A war? Over a drink? That makes no sense. Also, if it is harmful, how can it be beneficial to them? Grash exhaled sharply. That's the thing, Cadet. It's not harmful to them. It improves their function. Vrik's frills rippled with confusion. That contradicts basic biological logic. Grash let out a dry chuckle. Welcome to the mystery that is humanity. Vrik frowned, his mind racing. If coffee was toxic to most species but essential to humans, what did that say about their biology? He had studied humans in his academy training. They were adaptable, resilient, and strangely obsessed with consuming dangerous substances. But this was something else. Before he could press further, the door to the break room hissed open. A human entered. Vrik had interacted with humans before. He had seen them at their best. Fast, focused, sharp-minded creatures with a frightening capacity for problem-solving and innovation. He had heard stories of their endurance, their ability to survive extreme conditions, their bizarre tolerance for physical stress. The figure before him was none of those things. The human, Commander Riley, if Vrik recalled correctly, shuffled into the room like a malfunctioning automaton. His uniform was slightly dishevelled, his normally alert eyes were half-lidded, and his movements were sluggish, almost uncoordinated. His hair was in disarray, and the dark circles beneath his eyes suggested severe sleep deprivation. Vrik took an instinctive step back. "Sir?" he whispered to Grash. Is he ill?" Grash merely nodded toward the coffee dispenser. "Watch." Riley stumbled toward the machine with the single-minded determination of a predator locked onto its prey. He pressed a few buttons, grunted in frustration when the dispenser took too long, and finally grabbed the steaming mug that emerged from the unit. Without hesitation, he took a long sip. Vrik expected some kind of reaction, perhaps a shudder of pain, a grimace, something to indicate the beverage's toxicity. But no. Riley simply stood still for a moment, as if his system were rebooting. Then, in an instant, his entire demeanor changed. His posture straightened. His eyes sharpened, clearing as if a fog had been lifted. The sluggishness vanished, replaced with a quiet, contained energy. He exhaled slowly, then turned, finally seeming to acknowledge the presence of others in the room. "Morning," Riley said, his voice calm, composed, and distinctly more alive than before. Vrik's antennae recoiled in horror. By the void, he was near death, and now he is reborn? Grash clapped a heavy hand on Vrik's shoulder. "And that, Cadet, is why we don't question human biology. We just let them have their coffee." Vrik stared at the dispenser, horrified yet fascinated. His scientific curiosity demanded answers, but a deeper, more primal part of him whispered that some things were better left unexplored. Humans were terrifying. And whatever this coffee was, it was their dark, eldritch secret. Vrik couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen. It defied reason. It defied logic. It defied everything he knew about biology. How could a substance so toxic to most species be not only safe for humans, but necessary? How could it take a nearly lifeless creature and restore them to full function? He needed answers. The research begins. Vrik spent the next 2 cycles poring over every available database on human physiology. The Galactic Coalition's medical archives contained extensive research on the species, studies on their absurd pain tolerance, their regenerative capabilities, and their baffling ability to consume substances that should, by all rights, kill them. But even among the many peculiarities of human biology, coffee held a special place. Caffeine, primary component of coffee, classified as a central nervous system stimulant, enhances alertness, reaction time, and cognitive function in humans. Highly addictive. Withdrawal effects include fatigue, irritability, and diminished mental performance. Vrik frowned. Addiction was not unusual. Many species had substances they relied on. But coffee wasn't just a luxury or a recreational stimulant. It was, for many humans, a requirement for baseline function. He needed to hear it from them directly. Interviews with the humans. Armed with a datapad and a burning curiosity, Vrik approached the human officers on the station. His first subject was Lieutenant Carter, an engineer with a reputation for solving complex mechanical problems in record time. "Lieutenant," Vrik began, "I am conducting an independent study on human biology, specifically regarding the substance known as coffee. Would you be willing to answer a few questions?" Carter blinked. Then, with the enthusiasm of a man discussing his favorite lifeline, he grinned. "Oh, hell yeah. I'd take a bullet for coffee." Vrik hesitated. His eyes darted to Carter's face, searching for any indication of jest. He was not sure if this was human exaggeration or a literal statement. Given their history, it could very well be both. Nonetheless, he recorded it. "Would take a bullet for coffee. How would you describe your dependence on it?" "Dependence," Carter snorted. "Buddy, if I don't get my morning cup, I'm not an engineer. I'm an unsolved equation with anger issues." Vrik tilted his head. "Could you elaborate?" Carter sighed. "Okay, so imagine you have a high-performance engine, right? Runs smooth, powerful, efficient. Now imagine you dump sand into the fuel tank. That's what happens to my brain without coffee." Vrik took detailed notes. "Coffee deprivation equals mental sand contamination?" He moved on to his next subject, Dr. Evelyn Cho, a senior medical officer. "Doctor, do you drink coffee?" She let out a dry laugh. "Does a star need hydrogen?" Vrik hesitated. "That is not an answer." Cho smirked. "Yes, Vrik. I drink coffee. Lots of it." "What happens if you do not?" She shuddered. "Don't even joke about that." Vrik was beginning to sense a pattern. Finally, he sought out Commander Riley, the human he had first witnessed undergoing the coffee transformation. "Commander, I would like to ask—" "Let me stop you right there," Riley interrupted. "I already know what this is about. You saw me before my first cup, didn't you?" Vrik nodded. Riley sighed. "Yeah, that wasn't my proudest moment." "Why does coffee have such a dramatic effect on your species?" "Because the universe is cruel," Riley said dryly. "Look, some people can function without it. I am not one of those people. No coffee. My brain stays in airplane mode all day." Vrik made a note. Airplane mode equals suboptimal performance state. Vrik had learned a great deal, but there was one final question he needed answered. What would happen if a human was forced to go an entire cycle, 24 hours, without coffee? The database had described withdrawal symptoms, but he needed to observe them firsthand. Controlled conditions. precise documentation. Grash, upon hearing Vrik's idea, nearly had an aneurysm. "Cadet, I will not be responsible for the chaos you are about to unleash," he growled. "You think humans are dangerous with coffee? You're about to find out what they're like without it, and I promise you, you are not ready." Vrik, in the name of scientific discovery, ignored the warning. The experiment begins. The subject of the experiment was Lieutenant Greg Mason, a senior-level engineer. He was a perfectly ordinary human. No extreme temper, no erratic behavior, just a standard functional crew member. However, Mason's role often required him to work grueling 24-hour shifts, troubleshooting critical systems under intense pressure. To compensate, he was a heavy coffee drinker, consuming multiple cups a day just to stay operational. If there was anyone aboard who could demonstrate the true effects of caffeine deprivation, it was him. Vrik approached him in the break room. "Lieutenant Mason, would you be willing to participate in a study?" Mason, sipping a very large cup of coffee, raised an eyebrow. "Depends. What kind of study?" Vrik activated his datapad. "I require a human test subject to abstain from consuming coffee for 1 full cycle." Mason stopped mid-sip. He looked at Vrik, then at Grash, who was standing nearby, shaking his head, then back at Vrik. "You're asking me," Mason said slowly, "to go 24 hours without coffee?" "Yes." Mason placed his coffee down with the exaggerated care of someone setting aside a loaded weapon. "You do realize what you're asking, right?" Vrik's mandibles clicked. "I am aware that caffeine withdrawal causes a reduction in cognitive function. I wish to document the precise extent of this effect myself." Mason waved a hand. "You know what? You want to see what happens when you deprive a human of coffee for 24 hours? Fine, but I need you to write down in that little report of yours that when I inevitably go feral and start biting people, it is entirely your fault." Vrik stiffened, his grip tightening on his datapad. "Bee biting?" His normally smooth and deliberate writing faltered for a moment. He had studied caffeine withdrawal extensively, but nowhere had the reports mentioned feral aggression. Had the human been exaggerating, or was this some classified aspect of their physiology, hidden to prevent widespread panic? Either way, the experiment had begun, and for the sake of science, he had to know. Hour 1, baseline observations. Mason's initial state was recorded as fully functional. He moved with purpose, responded to stimuli promptly, and was able to perform calculations without difficulty. His speech was articulate, and his humor responses were at standard human levels of sarcasm. Hour 4, first signs of degradation. Vrik noticed Mason beginning to slow down. His responses to questions took longer. His posture had slightly sagged. When asked how he felt, Mason exhaled sharply and muttered, "It's all right, I guess, though I'm getting a mild headache." Vrik pressed for more details. Mason's brow furrowed. "Why do you need details? It's a headache. It aches. What, you want me to rate it on a scale? You writing a novel?" Vrik, sensing further questioning would be unwise, quietly recorded in his notes. Subject displaying mild headache, fatigue, and early signs of irritation. Further deterioration expected. The confirmation came moments later when a junior technician accidentally bumped into Mason's chair. Mason slowly turned to face them, eyes narrowed. "Do you mind?" he asked, voice dripping with exhaustion and menace. The technician blinked. Sorry, sir." "Sorry?" Mason scoffed. No, it's fine. It's great. Just keep knocking into me. Maybe throw a wrench at my head while you're at it. Really complete the experience." The technician wisely fled. Hour 8, the brain fog. Mason's usual sharpness had dulled. His responses were slower, his expression vaguely unfocused, as if processing the world through a thick haze. When a junior officer approached him with a requisition form, Mason took it, squinted at it, and frowned. "What is this?" he asked. The officer hesitated. A requisition form." Mason nodded slowly. Right. And what do you want me to do with it?" "Sign it." Mason blinked. He stared at the paper, then at the officer, then back at the paper. His expression shifted between confusion and mild existential dread. "Okay, but why?" The officer opened his mouth, then closed it, looking increasingly concerned. "Because you're the acting chief engineer on duty?" Mason let out a tired exhale and rubbed his face. "Okay, see, you're saying words, and I know they mean something, but I just—" He made an aimless gesture at the air. "I don't get them right now." The officer slowly reached for the form. "Maybe I'll just come back later?" Mason nodded sagely. Yeah, let's do that. This feels like a tomorrow problem. The officer left. Mason continued staring at the paper for another 10 seconds before realizing the officer was gone. He sighed, muttered something about needing a nap, and shuffled off in the opposite direction. Vrik noted with growing unease. Subject displayed cognitive impairment, failed to comprehend routine paperwork, questioned the fundamental purpose of signatures, and abandoned task entirely. Decline is accelerating. Hour 12. Cognitive impairment escalates. Mason attempted to log inventory, but spent 10 minutes staring at the screen before typing one word, potato. When questioned about this, he squinted at the datapad and replied, seemed right at the time. Vrik noted, severe lapse in logical processing, potential language degradation. Hour 16. Motor function decline. Mason now walked with a sluggish, almost zombie-like shuffle. He kept bumping into furniture, muttering, "Who put that there?" even when passing objects that had been in the same place for years. At one point, Mason was slumped over a console, mumbling incomprehensibly. His hands hovered over the keyboard, but he was typing nothing. His eyes were unfocused. "Lieutenant Mason," Vrik said, cautiously approaching. Mason made a vague waving gesture. "Go away. I live here now." Vrik's antennae twitched. "You live at your workstation?" Mason turned his head, moving with the stiff, unnatural motion of a malfunctioning droid. "I have always lived here." Vrik backed away. He was witnessing the full collapse of a human mind. He began to wonder if he had made a mistake. Hour 20. The breaking point. The tension in engineering had escalated to critical levels. Mason wasn't just tired, he was volatile. The crew had stopped asking him questions. They had stopped looking in his direction. One particularly unfortunate ensign had merely existed too close to Mason's workstation, only for Mason to round on him with the slow, eerie precision of a predator locking on to prey. "What?" Mason said, voice eerily controlled. "Do you want?" The ensign, already regretting his life choices, held up a datapad. Just a diagnostic approval, sir." Mason snatched the datapad. He stared at it. Then, without breaking eye contact, he snapped it clean in half. The ensign made a strangled noise. "Why," Mason said, his eye twitching, "do you keep bringing me paperwork?" He jabbed a finger at the broken device. "Do I look like I should be doing paperwork right now? That's like handing a guy a drink while he's using a jackhammer." Vrik, watching from a safe distance, motioned for the ensign to retreat. The ensign did, rapidly. Suddenly, "I can hear it," Mason muttered. "I can hear my own blood moving. It's so loud." Mason then turned toward the reactor console and spoke calmly in an eerie tone, words that sent a new level of panic through the room. "Maybe I should just turn everything off." "Lieutenant," Vrik said carefully, "perhaps if you would." Mason whirled on him so fast that Vrik nearly dropped his datapad. "I swear to all that is holy, if you say one more science thing at me, I will rewire your entire existence." That was the moment Grash made the executive decision. "Nobody move! Get this man coffee now!" Terrified, Vrik sprinted in with a fresh cup, hands shaking. He placed a steaming cup of coffee in front of Mason. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, with the slow, deliberate movements of a predator sensing prey, Mason lifted the cup and took a long, deep sip. The transformation was instantaneous. His posture straightened, his eyes sharpened. He blinked twice, as if rebooting. Then, in a calm, measured voice, he said, "Oh, hi! Sorry for the inconvenience." Vrik stumbled backward. You were broken, and now you are." Mason rolled his shoulders, flexed his fingers, and grinned. "What? I'm fine. Why?" Vrik's antennae curled inward in pure terror. "You died and came back to life." Mason laughed. "Yeah, sounds about right." Vrik's datapad trembled in his grip. He had witnessed something unnatural, something chilling. It wasn't just that Mason needed coffee. No, the realization struck like a thunderclap. Coffee wasn't his fuel. It was his leash. Mason stretched, exhaled contentedly, and picked up the requisition form from earlier. He glanced over it, then scribbled his signature without hesitation. "Right, let's get back to work." Vrik took a cautious step back. He would never, ever let Mason go without coffee again. Vrik turned to Grash, voice shaking. "Sir, what have we unleashed?" Grash clapped him on the back. "You unleashed it, Cadet. I warned you." Vrik's claws trembled as he looked back at Mason, now happily sipping his coffee and going about his duties as if nothing had happened. The universe was full of mysteries, but this was something else entirely. Vrik closed his datapad. He had seen enough. But Vrik had made a terrible mistake. He hadn't considered the consequences of his experiment beyond satisfying his own scientific curiosity. But word spread fast aboard GCS Harbinger, and soon the entire station was talking about the caffeine deprivation test. At first, it was just murmurs in the break room. Then, human officers started reenacting Mason's decline, dramatically slumping over consoles and muttering things like, "I have always lived here," whenever their cups ran dry. By midday, someone had started selling T-shirts that read, "I survived a day without coffee, and all I got was this lousy existential crisis." And that was when Station Commander Tavon found out. Summoned to the commander's office, the message arrived at 0800 sharp. Cadet Vrik and Officer Grash report to Commander Tavon immediately. Grash groaned. "Well, Cadet, it was nice knowing you." Vrik's frills twitched nervously. "Do you believe we will be punished?" Grash shot him a look. "I believe if the commander is in a bad mood, you might be the next experiment." Together, they made their way to the commander's office. Commander Tavon was a towering Drellian, his species known for their rigid discipline and meticulous attention to protocol. He sat behind his desk, his forearms crossed, his reptilian eyes fixed on Vrik with a gaze that could melt steel. "Cadet Vrik," he began in a dangerously calm voice, "would you care to explain why I received multiple reports of a human officer being deliberately deprived of coffee under your orders?" Vrik gulped. "Sir, it was a scientific study to better understand human biology." Tavon's jaw tightened. "You mean to tell me you subjected a human officer to prolonged cognitive and motor function impairment, resulting in what was described to me as, and I quote, the angriest zombie apocalypse ever witnessed?" Vrik opened his mandibles but hesitated. I would not phrase it that way, sir." Before Tavon could speak, the door slid open. 3 human officers walked in. Commander Riley, Dr. Cho, and Mason himself, fully caffeinated and looking none the worse for wear. Tavon glared at them. "This is a formal inquiry. What are you doing here?" Riley grinned. "Oh, we're here to defend the research." Vrik's antennae twitched in confusion. "Defend?" Dr. Cho nodded. "Cadet, I read your notes. They're actually very well documented. The effects of caffeine deprivation on cognitive performance have been studied before, but not in a controlled, real-world interspecies environment." Mason clapped Vrik on the shoulder. "You basically did the dumbest but most interesting science experiment in years." "Congrats!" Tavon pinched the bridge of his snout. "You humans are celebrating this?" Cho shrugged. "Well, yeah, it's not every day we get proof that coffee is basically our operating system." Riley smirked. "Besides, Mason signed up for it willingly, right?" Vrik nodded rapidly. "Yes, I obtained full consent before proceeding." Tavon sighed, rubbing his temples. "I cannot believe I am saying this, but I am officially marking this as unorthodox but ultimately harmless." Vrik felt relief wash over him. That relief lasted exactly 5 minutes. The emergency alert blared across the station. "Medical emergency. Viraxi diplomat in distress. Medbay immediate response required." Vrik and Grash exchanged alarmed glances before rushing toward the medbay with the others. Inside, chaos unfolded. Ambassador Krill Tanak of the Viraxi delegation lay on a medical bed, his translucent skin shifting through several distress colors. His multiple limbs spasmed uncontrollably. Monitors around him beeped wildly as medics scrambled. "What happened?" Commander Tavon barked. A nervous-looking ensign raised a shaking hand. The ambassador was in the break room. He saw a cup unattended, and, drank from it." Dr. Cho's eyes went wide. "You're telling me he drank coffee?" The ensign nodded. Vrik's frills pressed so close to his head he might as well have been trying to disappear. Grash groaned. "Oh, void, we just poisoned a diplomat." Vrik checked the medical scanner. Krill Tanak's vital signs were all over the place. His heart rate was nearly doubled, and his neural activity was wildly erratic. "He is experiencing severe overstimulation," Vrik muttered. "His species lacks the neurochemical pathways to process caffeine. It's like flooding his system with raw electricity." Ambassador Krill Tanak suddenly sat bolt upright and let out a rapid string of words in his native tongue, speaking 4 times faster than normal. His translator unit glitched due to overload. Riley blinked. Is he okay?" Tanak suddenly leaped from the bed, ran in a perfect circle, and then began solving every puzzle on a nearby data terminal at superhuman speed. Dr. Cho's jaw dropped. "Oh no, he's gone full hyperfocus." Vrik looked at the data readout. "He is processing information 10 times faster than normal, but his body is not built to sustain this for long. If we do not act, his system will crash in catastrophic failure." Tivon whirled to the humans. "Fix this!" Riley and Cho exchanged glances. "We need to decaffeinate him." "On it." Dr. Cho sprinted toward the medical supply cabinet, grabbing a sedative compound that would neutralize stimulants. "Someone stop him before he hacks the entire station." Mason lunged at the ambassador, only to be immediately dodged as Tanak vaulted over a med table, still solving equations at a breakneck pace. "Oh my stars! He's faster than me!" Mason shouted. Vrik watched in stunned disbelief. "This is the most terrifying thing I have ever seen." Eventually, with 3 officers working together, they managed to corner the hypercaffeinated diplomat and administer the sedative. Tanak slowed, then blinked, then muttered, "Your warp core phase variance is off by 0.24%. Compensate with a microflux recalibration," before promptly passing out on the medical bed. Savon exhaled. "Never speak of this." Mason cleared his throat. "So, technically, that means coffee temporarily turned him into a super genius?" Riley grinned. "Another breakthrough for science." Tavon turned slowly toward Vrik. Vrik, wide-eyed and horrified, simply held up his datapad. "Sir, I will be deleting all research files immediately." Tavon nodded. "Good." Vrik turned toward the break room, staring at the ominous dispenser label. "For human consumption only. Warning, highly toxic." In that moment, Vrik understood. Coffee wasn't just a beverage to humans. It was a safeguard, a containment field, the only thing standing between civilization and whatever primal force lurked beneath their weary eyes. Without it, they frayed at the edges, unraveling into something erratic, volatile, terrifying. For humans, coffee kept the monster at bay. To everyone else, it was a live wire, an overdose of madness their bodies were never meant to handle. He had learned his lesson. There were things in this universe that were never meant to be tampered with, some forces of nature that should be respected. He swore never to question the coffee dispenser again.